In the heart of the city, life races at full speed. Skyscrapers touch the clouds, deadlines never sleep, and ambition fills the air like electricity. Somewhere up high, a man signs million-dollar deals with a glance. He seems to have it all: success, power, respect. But inside, something is missing, and he knows it. Far from those glass towers, in a quiet neighborhood where buses rattle and kids laugh barefoot in the streets, lives a woman most people would overlook. Her days are long, her income small, but her dreams immense. She doesn't own much, but what she has, she builds with heart. And she believes deep down that her life is meant for more. These two people were never supposed to meet. Their worlds couldn't be more different. One forged in luxury, the other in struggle. But fate doesn't care about status or wealth. Sometimes all it takes is one moment, one unexpected encounter, to spark a chain reaction. And that's exactly what's about to happen. James Carter wakes up before the sun in a penthouse that echoes with silence. His morning routine is flawless: tailored suit, imported coffee, a driver waiting at the curb. From the outside, he's the definition of success. CEO of a billion-dollar tech firm, headlines in every business magazine. But as the elevator climbs to his office on the 47th floor, he stares at his reflection. And he sees a man who's built everything except meaning. His day is filled with numbers, screens, and stiff handshakes. Investors demand more growth. His board expects miracles, and his phone never stops buzzing. But none of it moves him anymore. At night, James sits alone at his dining table, scrolling through old emails he once sent to himself. Messages filled with wild dreams and passion. Dreams he traded for spreadsheets and stock prices. Meanwhile, in a small, weathered house across town, Grace Thompson starts her day sewing under a flickering light bulb. Her hands are rough from years of work, but her spirit shines through every design. She makes dresses from recycled fabric, adding a personal touch that no factory could replicate. Her clients, neighbors, single mothers, school teachers, each treated like royalty. She may not have a brand, but she has a purpose. Grace doesn't complain when the power flickers or when rain seeps through the roof. She smiles anyway, focused on her next idea: an eco-friendly clothing line for women who can't afford luxury but deserve to feel powerful. Every stitch is a rebellion against the odds. She sells through local fairs, word of mouth, and dreams of launching online. But resources are scarce, and every step forward feels like pushing a mountain. Her daughter, Lily, just 8 years old, often does homework beside the sewing machine. Grace teaches her not just math, but resilience. They laugh, they struggle, and sometimes cry together, but never give up. Grace believes success isn't a destination. It's the small wins, the courage to keep going when no one's clapping. And even without a stage, she performs her daily miracle, creating something beautiful from almost nothing. Two lives unfold in the same city, separated by wealth, but connected by something deeper. One is surrounded by luxury, yet starving for meaning. The other is surrounded by struggle, yet bursting with purpose. They've never met, but their destinies are on a slow collision course. Because sometimes the ones with the most to offer are the ones the world overlooks, but not for long. James didn't want to be there. It was just another corporate outreach initiative, suggested by his PR team to humanize the brand. He stepped out of the sleek black car and into a part of the city he hadn't seen in years. The roads were cracked, but the people smiled. Children waved, and something about the warm air felt real. As he toured the community center, someone caught his eye, a woman showing hand-sewn dresses to a small group of women. She spoke with passion, her eyes alive with vision. "These pieces aren't just clothes," she said. "They're confidence. They're stories." James watched from a distance, arms crossed, expression unreadable. When they were introduced, Grace smiled and said, "Nice to meet you, Mr. Carter. I've followed your work for years." James gave a polite nod. "And you sew?" he asked with a hint of disinterest. Grace didn't flinch. "I build dreams. Fabric is just my tool." He wasn't expecting that. For a second, the CEO didn't know what to say. He walked away, pretending not to be moved, but her words lingered like a whisper he couldn't silence. Something in her energy, her clarity, reminded him of who he used to be. She didn't pitch a proposal or ask for funding. She simply spoke from the heart, and without knowing it, she left a crack in the armor he had built for years. Back in his office, James stared at his computer screen, but his mind was elsewhere. The reports blurred. The charts felt meaningless. Grace's words echoed louder than any quarterly earnings report. "I build dreams. Fabric is just my tool." For the first time in years, James felt something he couldn't name, something like longing. That night, he went home early, unusual for him. He dusted off an old cardboard box, buried in the back of his closet. Inside, a faded notebook, early sketches from when he first dreamed of inventing products that would change lives. Before money, before titles, back when passion was enough. That version of James had been gone for too long. Meanwhile, Grace stitched late into the night. Her hands hurt, her eyes burned, but she didn't stop. A local vendor canceled a bulk order last minute. It was a heavy blow. Rent was coming, and the fridge was almost empty. Still, she hugged her daughter, tucked her into bed, and whispered, "We're going to make it. You'll see." She decided to apply for a local entrepreneurship grant, even though she knew the odds were slim. With shaky hands, she prepared her pitch, printed her lookbook, and walked into the panel alone. Among the judges was a familiar face, James. He didn't say a word, just listened, but his expression was different this time. As she spoke, he felt something shift. Grace wasn't selling a product. She was offering a vision, one of empowerment, sustainability, and dignity. She didn't beg. She didn't try to impress. She simply believed. And somehow that belief was enough to make James feel alive again. He left the room changed. Though she didn't know it yet, Grace walked home that day unsure of what would come next. She hadn't received a decision, and doubt crept in like a cold wind. But she held her head high. Because for once, someone in power had really listened. And sometimes, that's all a seed needs to grow. Even if you can't see it yet, something big is already beginning. Grace was repairing a seam when her phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. She hesitated, wiped her hands on her apron, and answered. "Hi, Grace. This is James Carter," the voice said, calm but clear. "I'd like to meet again, not as a judge, but as someone who believes in what you're building." Her heart skipped a beat. It felt surreal, like life was finally noticing her. They met at a quiet cafe downtown. No suits, no cameras, just two people. James looked different, softer, less guarded. "I don't want to buy your business," he said. "I want to help you grow it your way." He offered mentorship, funding, supplier connections, even branding support. Grace looked at him, stunned. "Why now?" He smiled. "Because you reminded me what creation really feels like." Within weeks, Grace had a larger space with real equipment, no more borrowed tables. She hired 2 local women who were also struggling to make ends meet. Every morning they met at sunrise, filling the studio with laughter, music, and hope. But it wasn't easy. There were setbacks, late shipments, and days when nothing sold. Still, with every new stitch, her belief grew stronger. This wasn't just a job, it was a mission. James began visiting often, not just to check progress, but to be part of it. He rolled up his sleeves, helped carry boxes, and even gave feedback on designs. Grace noticed the change. His eyes were brighter, his smile more genuine. He spoke less about numbers and more about people, about impact, about meaning. And somewhere along the way, he stopped saving the world from behind a desk and stepped into it. Grace didn't treat James like a savior. She treated him like a partner. She pushed back on his ideas when they didn't align with her vision, and he respected that. He listened, adapted, and grew alongside her. They challenged each other daily, not out of ego, but out of belief. What they were building wasn't just a business. It was a shared legacy of purpose. 3 months in, the brand had tripled its reach and changed lives along the way. Mothers gained jobs, teens gained hope, and the community finally felt seen. Grace stood at the heart of it all. No longer overlooked, no longer alone. James watched silently one afternoon as a girl tried on a dress and smiled at herself. And in that quiet, tear-filled moment, he realized this was the kind of empire he always wanted to build. Back at Carter Tech, not everyone saw Grace's project the same way. Some executives whispered behind closed doors, calling it a distraction. "She's not scalable, she's not proven," they said, crunching spreadsheets. Board members raised eyebrows at the funding shift, questioning James's judgment. For the first time in years, he felt pressure not from competition, but from within. Meanwhile, Grace was juggling more than fabric and design. The growing demand outpaced her tiny operation, and orders fell behind. A supplier bailed last minute, leaving her without material for a major launch. Stress mounted. She didn't sleep for days, her hands blistered from overwork, and just when she needed strength most, she started to doubt herself. One afternoon, James visited the workshop and found Grace pacing. "I can't keep up," she said, frustrated. "Maybe they were right. Maybe I'm not ready." James, tired from corporate battles, snapped, "You need to act like a real business now." The room went silent. Her eyes filled with tears, not from weakness, but betrayal. "I am a real business," she whispered. "You just forgot why you believed in me." For a few days, they didn't speak. Grace focused on fulfilling backlogged orders alone. James sat in his office, staring at the empty chair where she once pitched her dream. He replayed her words in his head. He realized he had let pressure turn passion into expectation, and in doing so, he nearly crushed the very light that inspired him. James returned, not with contracts, but with coffee and an apology. "I forgot who I was when I met you," he said, "but you reminded me, and I want to do this your way." Grace smiled through tired eyes. "Then, we do it together, as equals." They sat on the floor, surrounded by fabrics and ambition, and planned a relaunch, not for investors, but for the people they aimed to serve. The backlash didn't stop, but now they faced it as a team. Grace hired more local talent. James restructured part of Carter Tech to support social ventures. Their story began spreading, online, in magazines, even in schools. Not as a marketing stunt, but as proof that purpose and profit can walk side by side. And through it all, they learned. Real growth doesn't come when things are easy. It comes when you don't give up. 1 year later, Grace stood in her new workshop, 3 times the size of the original. The sewing machines buzzed as women from her neighborhood stitched with pride. Each dress now carried a tag that read, "Made with grace, worn with purpose." She didn't just build a brand. She built a movement. And she did it without changing who she was. The ripple effect spread far beyond fashion. Young girls started workshops. Retired grandmothers became mentors. Local schools asked Grace to speak about leadership and courage. The streets that once echoed with struggle now echoed with hope. The neighborhood wasn't forgotten anymore. It was thriving. At Carter Tech, things changed too. James restructured a portion of the company to support grassroots ventures. He launched an internal program to back ideas from overlooked voices. His board once doubted him. Now they quoted him. He wasn't just a CEO anymore. He was a builder of futures. People began to talk, not about Grace or James individually, but about what they represented: possibility. 2 strangers from opposite worlds, united by one belief: that talent doesn't live only in boardrooms or Ivy League resumes. Sometimes the brightest minds are hidden in plain sight. One evening, James visited the community alone. He stood outside Grace's workshop, watching as laughter filled the air. A little girl twirled in a dress and shouted, "Mommy, I feel beautiful." He smiled, not because he created this, but because he helped unleash it. And for the first time, he felt whole. So what changed everything? Not money, not fame, not strategy. It was a moment of connection, genuine, human, and unexpected. Because sometimes the biggest transformations begin with a single voice and someone who chooses to listen.